The unseen genius of Princeton. Dr. Richard Coleman's voice, sharp as a surgeon's scalpel, sliced through the hushed auditorium, silencing 200 students. His gaze, laser focus, impaled Marcus Johnson, the lone black face in the front row of Princeton University's elite advanced physics course. 19-year-old Marcus, unnervingly calm, met the renowned theoretical physicist's escalating hostility with an unblinking stare. The tension was a palpable, living thing, stretching seconds into an eternity. "I asked what you're doing in my class," Coleman repeated, his expensive spectacles glinting as he advanced. "This course is for exceptional IQs, not for those admitted by quota." A nervous murmur rippled through the auditorium. Marcus, it was true, had simply appeared, unannounced and unenrolled, claiming his seat as if by right. To Coleman, a laureate of international awards and a revolutionary in quantum physics, Marcus's presence was a personal affront. "I'm here to learn physics, sir," Marcus replied, his voice surprisingly steady. Coleman scoffed. "Learn physics? You wouldn't even comprehend what we discuss here." He swept a hand toward the blackboard, a canvas of intricate equations. "This isn't high school, young man." No one in that room knew Marcus Johnson's truth. He clawed his way up from a treacherous Newark neighborhood, where schools barely had qualified teachers. At 12, a discarded physics book rescued from a dumpster became his sanctuary from the surrounding violence. And they certainly didn't know he had devoured every article Coleman had ever published. "Perhaps a practical demonstration is in order," Coleman declared, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes playing on his lips. "Since you're so eager to learn, come up and solve this." He gestured to a particularly thorny quantum electrodynamics problem, a challenge designed to consume hours. Students exchanged nervous glances. It was a deliberate humiliation, a reassertion of professor's dominance. Marcus hesitated for only a second, then rose. As he approached the blackboard, flashbacks surged. Night studying by candlelight when the power failed, books salvaged from forgotten libraries, the jeers of classmates who couldn't fathom his passion. "You have 1 hour," Coleman announced, checking his watch with anticipated satisfaction. "Or rather, until the end of class, to try." Marcus picked up the chalk, his fingers steady despite the pressure. A strange calm enveloped him as he surveyed the problem. Equations, for him, had always been a secret language, a code unlocking the universe's deepest mysteries. Coleman retreated to his desk, certain he had put the intruder in his place. He missed a glint in Marcus's eyes, the faint smile beginning to form on his lips. "Do you mind if I use the Coleman-Weinstein approach?" Marcus asked calmly, referring to an advanced method professor himself had developed years ago. Coleman's eyebrows shot up. How could this young man know about his obscure collaborative work, published only in the most specialized journals? As Marcus's chalk glided across the blackboard with surprising precision, a different silence descended upon the auditorium. It was no longer tense, but filled with mounting astonishment. The young man's hands moved with the confidence of a conductor, translating complex thoughts into elegant mathematical symbols. In the audience, a brilliant Asian student named Min, a research fellow under Coleman, watched with particular interest. She recognized Marcus's innovative approach. It wasn't merely a reproduction of the theory, but his own refined interpretation, almost an improvement. Coleman remained frozen, his expression a kaleidoscope of disbelief and growing unease. There was something about the young man's demeanor, the effortless way he manipulated concepts that made even doctoral students sweat, that hinted at a far more complex history than he had imagined. What no one in that room could have foreseen was that this impromptu confrontation was more than a physics problem. It was a prelude to a turning point that would shake the very foundations of the university, and indeed, academic elitism itself. In just 20 minutes, not an hour, Marcus's skilled hands completed a solution that silenced even the brightest students. The subsequent quiet was no longer derisive, but reluctantly admiring. "Impossible," Coleman muttered, leaning forward to scrutinize the solution. "You must have memorized a specific problem." Marcus shook his head. "No, sir. I simply applied the transformation you published in the Journal of Quantum Physics in 2020, but with a variation that eliminates 3 intermediate steps." Coleman paled. That article had fewer than 100 citations and was considered one of his most esoteric contributions. How could this young man know it so intimately? "Class dismissed," he announced abruptly. "You." He pointed at Marcus. "My office now." As students filed out, buzzing with excitement, Min, the research assistant, deliberately dropped several papers near Marcus. "Help me with these," she said quietly. Bending low, shielded from prying eyes, she whispered, "He's going to try to destroy you. I've seen it before. Meet me in the library at 7 p.m. quantum physics section. Bring a flash drive." In Coleman's elegant office, adorned with photos of him alongside Nobel laureates and presidents, the confrontation continued. "I want to know who really solved that equation for you," he demanded, flinging a folder across the table. "Your file says you come from a public school in Newark. No math competitions, no science awards. Explain how that's possible." Marcus took a deep breath. "I taught myself, sir, since I was 12. "Lies." Coleman slammed his fist on the table. "Someone is using you to demoralize me. Was it Takahashi or Goldstein from MIT?" "No one is using me," Marcus replied calmly. "I can prove it with any other problem you choose." Coleman's eyes narrowed. "Have you heard of superstring theory? I want a complete essay on its implications for unifying general relativity with quantum mechanics by Friday. 10 pages with equations. Impossible without formal training." "I'll have it by Thursday," Marcus replied, holding the professor's gaze. When he left the office, he felt exhausted. This confrontation hadn't been part of the plan. Marcus had spent the last 6 months meticulously preparing for college, having been rejected 3 times despite his perfect grades. He had developed a bold strategy. At 7 p.m., in the nearly empty library, he found Min in the designated section. "Why are you helping me?" he asked suspiciously. Min glanced around before answering. "Because I know what it's like to be judged by your appearance, not your knowledge." She showed him a flash drive. Coleman isn't just prejudiced. He's dishonest. 2 years ago, he stole a theory from an international doctoral student and published it as his own. The student was expelled when he complained. Marcus absorbed the information, a knot tightening in his stomach. "How did you get this?" "I'm his assistant. I have access to everything." She hesitated. "Including the next article he's going to publish. It's revolutionary, but he didn't develop it. Professor Thompson did, before he died of a heart attack." That night, in the small apartment he shared with his mother, a nurse working double shifts, Marcus opened his hidden closet. A loose board on the floor concealing hundreds of meticulous notes, scientific articles printed on recycled paper, and journals filled with equations. Among the papers were rejection letters from Princeton. "Unfortunately, your qualifications, while impressive, do not meet the standards of excellence required by our program." With a dim light illuminating his small sanctuary of knowledge, Marcus sent an email to the physics department. "I formally request to enroll in Dr. Coleman's advanced course as my right under the expanded access program." He knew this would trigger an administrative review. Coleman would be forced to publicly justify any refusal. Over the next few days, Marcus divided his time between preparing his essay on superstrings and something far more ambitious. Using Min's information, he began analyzing Coleman's next big work. He discovered not only that it was plagiarized, but also that it contained fundamental flaws the professor had failed to notice when appropriating someone else's work. In the university cafeteria, a few days later, Min found him again. "Coleman is looking into your background. He found out you applied 3 times and were rejected each time. He's convinced you're being manipulated by some academic rival." "Perfect," Marcus replied with a discreet smile. "Let him think that." "What are you planning?" Min asked, intrigued by his calmness. "Justice," he replied simply. "Not just for myself." What no one knew, not even Min, was that Marcus wasn't just fighting for himself. In his Newark neighborhood, he secretly tutored physics and math to teenagers like himself, bright young people without opportunities, rejected by a system that judged them by their skin color, their zip code, or their last name. On Thursday, as promised, Marcus handed in his essay on superstring theory. It wasn't 10 pages, but 25, with an original approach linking the theory to the latest discoveries in particle physics. Coleman leafed through the document with growing suspicion, which transformed into ill-concealed amazement. "This is surprising," he finally admitted, "but it doesn't change anything. You're still an intruder in my class." "Not for long," Marcus replied calmly. "The academic committee meeting is tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'll be there to argue for your formal admission." What Coleman didn't notice as he dismissed Marcus with an arrogant gesture was a small smile forming on the young man's face. The kind of smile that only appears when all the pieces of a meticulous plan begin to fall perfectly into place. That same night, as the campus quieted, light still shone in 2 distant windows. In the first, Coleman frantically reviewed his next big article, the one that would secure his place in the history of physics. In the second, much smaller and more modest, Marcus Johnson finished his own analysis of the same work, an analysis that would reveal much more than brilliant equations. The next day, the immaculate meeting hall would become the scene of one of the greatest reversals that the century-old institution had ever witnessed. And while the university slept, unaware of the storm approaching, something extraordinary had already begun to happen. Fear had changed sides. The Princeton University meeting hall was packed when Marcus entered. The academic committee, composed of 6 full professors and the dean, occupied a raised table. Coleman, impeccable in his expensive suit, wore a confident smile. "Mr. Johnson requests formal admission to Dr. Coleman's advanced course," announced Dr. Harris, chair of the committee. "Dr. Coleman, I understand you have objections." Coleman rose with the confidence of someone who had never lost an academic battle. "This young man does not have the necessary qualifications. His presence would compromise the scientific rigor of our institution. If I may," Marcus interrupted, his calm voice filling the hall, "I would like to submit 2 documents for the committee's consideration." Coleman frowned as Marcus distributed folders to the members. "The first document is my essay on superstring theory, which Dr. Coleman himself described as astonishing." The professors leafed through the work with expressions of growing interest. "This is extraordinarily sophisticated," murmured Dr. Peterson, a specialist in theoretical physics. "The second document," Marcus continued, his voice subtly changing, "is a comparative analysis between Dr. Coleman's forthcoming major article, soon to be published, and the unpublished work of the late Professor Thomson." Coleman's face drained of color. "That's absurd. A desperate attempt to—" "Page 3, paragraph 2, Marcus said calmly. "The mathematical derivation is identical, word for word, symbol for symbol, to Thomson's manuscript." A deathly silence fell over the room as the committee quickly checked the indicated pages. "That proves nothing." Coleman recovered partially. "Thomson and I collaborated frequently." Marcus nodded. "That's why I also included on page 7 proof of the critical error that Dr. Coleman failed to notice when copying the work, an error that would completely invalidate the theory if published, an error that any physicist who truly understood the work would have noticed." Coleman's face twisted in anger. "Who's behind this? Goldstein? Takahashi? Who's manipulating this boy?" "No one is manipulating me," Marcus replied, remaining unperturbed. "Just as no one taught me advanced physics. I taught myself from books salvaged from the trash and articles printed on recycled paper." Marcus turned to the committee. "I didn't come here to expose Dr. Coleman. I came because I deserve the same opportunity as any other student with my level of knowledge." Men rose from the audience. "I can confirm all of this. As Dr. Coleman's assistant, I have access to Thomson's original documents, and this isn't the first case." Dr. Peterson removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes in disbelief. "Coleman, is this true?" Coleman's silence was answer enough. His academic empire, built on prestige and intimidation, was crumbling before his eyes. "I also have testimony from 3 other students," Marcus added, placing a flash drive on the table. "All international, all marginalized when they questioned the use of his ideas." Dr. Harris looked directly at Coleman. "A formal investigation will be launched immediately." Turning to Marcus, she said, "As for your request, Mr. Johnson, you're officially accepted into the program with a full scholarship." Coleman exploded. "You can't do this. I'm Richard Coleman. My name is in fundamental theory. That which I corrected on the board last week," Marcus added, without arrogance, just stating a fact. "And honestly, credit has never been important to me. Only physics." "Get out!" Coleman shouted, lunging toward Marcus. Two security guards quickly restrained him. "Richard Coleman, you are suspended from your duties until the investigation is complete," Dr. Harris declared, her voice firm. As the hall exploded in murmurs, Marcus remained calm. There was no visible satisfaction on his face, only the serenity of someone who had finally been able to show his true ability. From the back of the room, someone began to applaud. Soon, others joined in, and a wave of applause filled the room. Among the faces in the crowd, Marcus recognized several minority students who had been silenced for years in this system. At that historic moment, as Coleman was escorted out, something much bigger than a simple case of plagiarism was being exposed, an entire system built to keep certain groups at the top and others invisible. The young man from Newark had not only earned his place, he had started a silent revolution that would echo through the halls of the prestigious institution for generations. And as the applause grew, a question hung in the air. How many other Marcus Johnsons were there around the world, their brilliant minds overshadowed not by a lack of ability, but by a system that refused to see them? 3 months later, Princeton University's main auditorium was packed, not for a regular class, but for the first official lecture of the newest member of the faculty, Assistant Professor Marcus Johnson, age 19. The buzz died down as he took the stage, now wearing an official faculty badge. "Welcome to the first class of Applied Quantum Physics. Rethinking the fundamentals," Marcus began, his confident voice resonating in the same space where he had been humiliated months earlier. In the front rows, students from various courses, including many young Black, Latino, and other minority students who rarely ventured into the realm of advanced physics, watched in awe. Among them was Marcus's mother, a nurse who had switched her shift to witness this moment. Marcus had become an unlikely symbol of institutional change. The investigation into Coleman revealed not only systematic cases of plagiarism, but decades of discrimination against minority students. 6 other professors were investigated, and 2 resigned when their own academic skeletons came to light. "Physics," Marcus explained, unrolling elegant equations on the digital whiteboard, "does not belong to any race, social class, or gender. It belongs to those who have the courage to question and the humility to learn." In the back row, men smiled discreetly. Now, the coordinator of the outreach program Marcus had created, she helped identify extraordinary talent in public schools in marginalized communities. The program, funded in part by the severance package Marcus had received from the university, had already found 3 promising young people. Meanwhile, 800 kilometers away, at a small community college in rural Pennsylvania, Richard Coleman taught basic physics to uninterested freshmen. After being fired for just cause, his reputation was destroyed. No prestigious institution would accept his resume, and his most important publications had been retracted from scientific journals after being proven to be plagiarized. His arrogance had cost him everything. After the inaugural lecture, Dr. Peterson, the same man who had evaluated Marcus's work on the committee, approached him. "That theorem on practical applications of quantum mechanics in computing, it's absolutely brilliant." "Thank you," Marcus replied, "but it's not entirely my doing. It's the result of a study group I formed in Newark, bright young people with no formal educational opportunities." This was the biggest twist of all. Marcus had turned his classroom at Princeton into a hub connected virtually with dozens of talented young people from marginalized communities, creating a model of collaborative education that challenged academic elitism. His first official publication, Democratizing Scientific Knowledge, a model for radical inclusion in theoretical physics, was generating as much interest as his discoveries in quantum physics. At the end of the day, as he crossed campus, Marcus paused in front of the physics building, looking at his name newly added to the faculty plaque. A small group of Black first-year students approached him shyly. "Professor Johnson," said one young woman, "we formed a study group inspired by your story. Some of us almost gave up before we heard about you." Marcus smiled, remembering himself just a few months earlier. "The greatest obstacle to knowledge has never been our ability," he said. "It's been the world convincing us that we don't belong in certain spaces. But when you prove your worth, no matter how much they try to diminish you, you don't just open doors for yourself. You create passageways for everyone who comes after you." That night, in his new apartment near campus, Marcus sat down to review the resume of a promising young man from Chicago that men had identified. In the corner of his desk, framed, was a rejection letter Princeton had sent him 3 times. Next to it, a handwritten note. "Sometimes you have to break down the door they insist on closing for you." Marcus Johnson's story reminds us that true genius is not measured by knowledge alone, but by the courage to face a system designed to exclude. And that true justice isn't just winning. It's changing the rules of the game so that others can win too.